Hi, everyone. It's Terry Bruce, and this is another 10-minute nonprofit evaluation tips. Now, this month, we're talking about the foundational question of what is evaluation? And I shared with you this model, and I said that evaluation is not just research studies, forms, data. It is all of that and more, that it is, in fact, an ecosystem, which is a system comprised of many smaller subsystems that all work together in a seamless process. And I wanted to dive into this model in a little more depth this week and wanted to go into what are the component parts of each of these subsystems to get you thinking about all of the pieces that go into evaluation. And that's not to scare you or to make you realize how big it is, but it's to make you realize you may actually already be doing evaluation and not even realize it. A lot of times, organizations that I work with think that evaluation is something big and scary and formal, and it turns out they actually are doing evaluation. They just never realize that the stuff that they're doing is evaluation. So we're going to start by talking about this evaluation schema bubble first. And while I'm going through each of the component parts, what I would like you to do is I'd like you to take a scrap piece of paper. This is a back of the envelope exercise, but I'd like you to take a piece of paper and a pen, and I'd like you to draw 5 bubbles like I have arranged here around this outside ring. Label them as I have labeled, and in the margin next to each one, write in the things that your organization already does have. And then the things that you don't have that I mentioned, put those on the margin farther away. And then what you'll do is you'll draw a line between the things you have and the things you don't have to start mapping out your organization's ecosystem. So evaluation schema, what is that and what does that entail? Well, it starts with basically the research questions that you're asking and your intended results of your programs and services. And when I say research question, I don't necessarily mean anything that's terribly formal or complicated. It's just literally the questions that you're asking. So foundationally, you can categorize this as what do you want to know and why do you want to know it? And those are 2 really important guiding questions. The why do you want to know it? Now, oftentimes this will include things like a mission statement for your organization, vision statements, a strategic plan. Additionally, it can include action plans if you've broken your strategic plan that is usually multi-year down into 1-year action plans, logic models, and things like that. It can also just be oral questions like, how many people did we serve this year? That is part of your evaluation schema. That's what you're trying to determine through your evaluation. Next is the data bubble. Now, a lot of times when I start working with organizations, the first thing they ask me is, what is data and what constitutes data? And data is basically just facts and figures. It can be text or narrative as well as numbers, but data also includes things that you might not think of, such as interviews, and those could be like oral interviews. It can be photographs. So it can be your enrollment forms, test scores, customer satisfaction surveys. So anything where you're sort of capturing information, and sometimes you're taking paper forms and you're stuffing them in a filing cabinet, which would be your data management system. Sometimes you're putting that in a spreadsheet or a database. You're uploading photographs to an Instagram or social media. You're doing videos, recording things. It can also be observations. If you're doing community development work and doing block walks and things like that, where you're looking at both things that need improvement or things that have improved, all of that is data. And the data bubble also includes, very important that people often overlook, analysis. So once you've collected that data, are you just warehousing it or actually doing something with it? And are you tabulating it, summing it, or doing even more complicated things, turning it into charts, graphs, longitudinal studies, things like that? Distribution. I always like to joke with organizations that if you are collecting data into a system where you can then not get it back out, all you have done is built yourself a very expensive paperweight or a data warehouse. So once you have tabulated and analyzed your data, what are you doing with it? Who are you distributing it to? And that includes both internally, horizontally, and vertically. So is it being shared within a department, across departments, across the entire organization? Is it being shared up the chain of command, up to the executive management, executive director, and the board? And then externally, is it the data and the analysis being shared with donors, potential donors, stakeholders, members, potential members, volunteers, potential volunteers, the community at large, a community of learning? Are you doing workshops or seminars, writing white papers, making brochures? I get a lot of fundraising appeals, those nice one-page brochures that are like, we helped this many people this year and we raised this much money, things like that. That is distribution of your data. So think about all those ways that you are distributing, and also could be or should be distributing. Who needs to know these results? And how are you going to get it to them? And that includes oral, visual, blog posts, social media feeds, as well as print. And then utilization. If you're not using your data, if you're just distributing it as okay, here's the data, but then you're not implementing that into a feedback loop where decisions are being made based on your data. And that includes internally and externally. So internally, are you using your results about like the efficiency of your programs or the outcomes that they are or are not achieving to make changes to the program design and make the programs better, and cut programs, add programs, expand programs? But then also about the whole process of evaluating. Did you ask like softball questions, or did you ask hard questions? What about your data collection? Is it rigorous, or is it just sort of scattershot? Is it consistent? And making process improvements to the evaluation that you're doing. And this can include ad hoc meetings as well as routinized meetings. So like things like staff meetings, department meetings, and board meetings will include places where utilization and decision-making hopefully is happening. And then finally, of course, your programs and services. This involves the design of your program and the delivery of your programs, who's involved in those decisions, and what is the process that you are using to make changes, add programs, remove programs, change programs. It also includes standard operating procedures so that you're delivering the program the same way every time, because it's very hard to evaluate a program that has a wide variance. It might depend on who the instructor is that week, or you offer the program, whenever people ask for it, and 6 years apart, and it's really hard to have consistency. Then it's really hard to tabulate outcomes when there's so much variability in the design. All right, that was a lot. And that's certainly the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot more we could dive into and get a lot more specific, but I wanted to get you thinking about the component parts of evaluation. And evaluation is when something makes sort of a complete circle on this outside dial here, where it starts with the delivery of the program all the way up to we collect some data and we utilize that data in some way to make decisions internally or externally. That is evaluation. So hopefully you followed along and you made your map. You could color code it if you really want, get super fancy, but I want you to start thinking about at your organization, what parts of the evaluation ecosystem do you already have in place? Those pieces may not be working together seamlessly yet, but at least you have the component parts and can then start adding them together. And what are you missing and need to add? Do you not have feedback loops? Do you not have a mechanism for discussing evaluation results? Do you not have a mechanism for tabulating and summating your data that you collect? Or are you not distributing your data well and don't have a nice way to get it to people? All right, well, that's it for this week. I hope you'll come back, join me next week, where we'll be diving even further into this topic. In the meantime, if you have any questions at all, you can always email me, terrybruce@gmail.com.